Welcome. Thank you all for making the time to come here today in the middle of your day. Apparently, it's World Mushroom Day, I heard from a friend. I had no idea. Every day is World Mushroom Day for me. Um, but I would like to introduce myself and our very special presenter. So, my name is Gabby Bird. I'm a priestess and a modern mushroom medicine woman based in Palmer, Alaska. We have a brick and mortar apothecary here, and we help people with all kinds of different mushrooms, the medicinal mushrooms that everyone is, hearing about so much these days and working with for healing and for longevity, immune system toning, etc. And we also work with the psychoactive mushrooms through our ministry and through our apothecary, the Amanita muscaria and the psilocybin containing species. So today I am happy to welcome and present with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Markian Babbage, Dr. B. He is in Anchorage. He went to school in Arizona to become a naturopath, and he has been working. If I, mess this up in any way, Dr. B, just correct me. But he's been working in naturopathic oncology and amongst other medical practices. But I will actually let him introduce himself better. He's a wonderful friend, an avid forager. We have a lot of fun going into the woods together and talking science together. And he's helped me a lot to understand things that I have felt intuitively in my practice, but he's helped me a lot in kind of wrapping my head around the science. So that's why it's so important for him to be here today to talk to you guys, to continue to bridge this gap between science and spirituality, between nature and modern medicine. So without further ado, Dr. B, welcome, and would love to hear a little bit about you before we dive into the topics that we're here to learn about today.
Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, you guys, I it's funny, Gabby's taught me a lot and she just spoke. It's so funny. The inverse of what she just said was that I come from this very intuitive, earthy, primal background, but I think as I became an adult, of course, that was domesticated out of me. Because of course I went to naturopathic school to get like some degree on the wall to, you know, the, now I've been practicing for over 20 years. And even though of course I like my degree on the wall, I really feel like I'm entering a new phase in my life. All that science is super important, but the more I forage with friends like Gabby and her husband and other friends, and the more I forage by myself, the more I learn these amazing things that I don't think a textbook could ever teach. And that's part of what we want to convey to you guys today is some of the magic. Because it's kind of amazing that does anybody know how old mushrooms are? Because they're over 1 billion years old. And it's a little bit tough for the human brain to fully understand that, right? We barely understand it with ourselves, right? We know that there's an additive effect for example, with cholesterol or fats or lipids or maybe even sugar. We kind of know that it's not good for us, but yet we continue to have problems with these things all the time. And the additive effect later in life is that they compound and become a problem. I feel it's so funny hearing Gabby talk about mushrooms. I feel like mushrooms are like the really, really dorky kid in high school that Gabby and I were really good friends with. We always supported that friend. And now that dorky friend is now in their 20s and they became a movie star and everybody wants to talk to them. Everyone thinks they're amazing. But Gabby and I are like, well, hey, we've always supported our friend. Before our friend was even famous, we were very, very big supporters of a friend. And I think that extends to all of us, not just Gabby and I. I think all of us were friends with this mushroom, or all mushrooms, I should say, simply because you guys, 650 million years ago, we split from fungi. We were actually part of the same family. So that's like why it makes complete sense that when we see these compounds and talk about them, that they fit right into the compounds and neurotransmitter Lego pieces that we have in our brains and our physiological bodies. That makes complete sense. And I think that's part of why it's important for you guys to get a little bit of a context, a little bit of a history.
Can I interject with something, or can I add to this? So what Markian is talking about is a theory that many scientists and spiritual people have been describing for a long time, but one of the most famous descriptions of this is the stoned ape theory coming from Terence McKenna. He wrote Food of the Gods. He had a lot of material and still does on YouTube. However, he passed away from a brain tumor in the 90s. His ex-wife continues her work with mushrooms and specifically with small villages in the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. In Huautla de Jimenez, where Maria Sabina, the famous mushroom shaman, is from. But so back to what I was saying, Terence McKenna, he's been talking about the stoned ape theory, which is that we grew with the plants and fungi. We developed with them. And what Markian wrote me last night too is that, when people put group mushrooms into the plant, it happens a lot. They'll say, "Oh, these plants are so healing." Really, they're mushrooms, and they're more closely related to us animals than to plants. But basically, we have the receptors to receive the signaling from mushrooms, from plants, and we grew with this. That's why we have endocannabinoid systems. That's why we have certain parts of our
Serotonergic.
system that is very special channels to receive tryptamines, DMT. I learned that when the spirit pharmacist came into town for our Arctic Visions psychedelic conference, and that just blew my mind. And so anyway, sorry to interrupt if that
No,
was
sorry,
too.
I think that's a perfect interruption. I mean, and you guys, just to further this, I want to get because I really want to give you guys a grasp of how important this is. Think about this. So, billion years ago, mushrooms were on the planet. They were making all of the earth, and they were setting up all the mycorrhizal networks so that all of these plants and trees could actually have these networks to grow themselves. This is an underground internet that plants and trees use to share information and to help each other. Boy, oh boy, wouldn't it be amazing if humans could actually take a little bit of a lesson from this type of behavior? It's a more socialist type of behavior where the plants and the trees are literally working together, not trying to climb over each other to get to the top, but simply helping each other get to the top so that everybody can find their place of existence. Every mushroom can. I think that it's pretty incredible. So what, like Gabby said, we're more related to them than we are than plants are actually only 700 million years old, you guys. Although that's clearly old. Mushrooms were around first, and mushrooms propagated and made this earth possible for trees to grow. Now we have this network that, like you guys, I've said this before at lectures, if you've heard it before, our forest is the biggest forest on the planet, and our forest here could not exist without some of these mushroom species fixing nitrogen and using their pathways to allow these trees to get the nutrients. So, it's funny, there's
And this ties into what we were talking about last night about chaga specifically. Obviously, chaga and amanita grow up here in the boreal birch forest, and they're symbiotic. And the chaga, a lot of times when you read about chaga, the simple descriptions online will say this is a parasitic mushroom that grows on the birch tree. And Markian and I are in agreement. Dennis as well. My husband and my husband is out there consistently all winter, foraging the chaga off the birch, and we know from being around this mushroom, from consuming this mushroom, from tapping into the energy of this mushroom, watching how it grows and where it grows in nature. The chaga is a shared medicine of the forest. It's not a parasite. Where you find chaga is on the damaged birch trees that are in swampy areas that have water damage, and they're sharing the chaga to patch up the damages and to repair and for the tree to have a longer life. And so we witnessed this by experiencing nature on our own by bioassaying, taking the mushroom ourselves and going into the forest and observing what it's doing, like how it's acting in the forest. Amanita muscaria cannot be grown in a lab. It's mycorrhizal. Chaga can be grown in a lab, but when it doesn't grow on a birch tree, it does not contain betulinic acid or betulin, some of the top antioxidants, the most powerful antioxidants in the mushroom itself. When you buy chaga that's grown on brown rice substrate, you're not getting any of that. So where the mushrooms come from is very important. And What they're
Yeah,
doing in the forest is something to look at. The doctrine of signatures, Dr. Markian has taught me in the past that term.
totally. Gabby hits a point. You guys like mushrooms. You should think about mushrooms like straws because they are. Like I can suck on this mushroom and I can get water out of it like a straw. And that means that this mushroom is going to actually suck up whatever it's growing in. So, I've said this before, if you're foraging mushrooms, try and get away from the road because it's probably going to be that those mushrooms at the side of the road are going to have more of the chemicals that you find from the exhaust in cars.
Right.
Um,
Excuse me, they're bioremediators, both in nature and in our bodies. So they're cleaning up. So getting clean mushrooms from clean areas is imperative. Of course, if you're just messing around, you want to eat some, it's a personal choice, but when we forage, we're foraging in very clean, pristine areas. Dennis always says that the chaga here in the valley, in the Matanuska Valley, is some of the best in the world because we get the clean air from the ocean flowing through here. It's not like up in Fairbanks where it's literally like a pit in the middle of winter. There's so much smoke and wood smoke and all the fumes are just keeping staying down in that valley. And so not to say there's people who are going to say their Fairbanks chaga is the best, but I see what Dennis is saying is that, this air is always being cleaned and purified by the ocean. And so we really think that it's a better place to harvest. So not to toot our own horns, but it does matter where it grows. And
totally.
yeah.
And we're really lucky that actually we have this abundance up here, you guys. And I'm going to speak to that in a second because I think these mushrooms can teach us so many lessons. So just to reiterate, we're trying to give you guys a history so that because I want to give you this history because I think at first if someone told me when I was 25 that we were related to mushrooms, I would have not believed them. I would have said this is baloney. But I think the more and more you learn about mushrooms, the more and more it's pretty blatantly obvious. Here's another point. So we are more closely related to mushrooms than we are related to plants. Their cell walls contain chitin. Chitin is something that we contain in our keratinized cells, like in our nails and our hair. This is pretty cool that we share these traits with mushrooms, and what really hit the point home when I first met Gabby was really wonderful because I did a lecture on Amanita muscaria. And for me, it was really fun to do the lecture. And what I noticed when I was learning about Amanita muscaria was that there's this glutamate portion to the plant, which is associated with the ibotenic acid portion of the plant. And then there's this other GABA portion of the plant, which is associated with the muscarinic acid port. And you guys know about GABA already because we have so many things in our current environment in our society that require GABA, right? We have a lot of garbage on the news. We have a lot of stress. We have a lot of arguing. We have a lot of polarization. And we have a lot of anxiety. And that's probably a result of eons and eons of domestication and use of blue light. Because originally red light was what dominated our evenings. We had fire and we had sunsets and we promoted our production of melatonin with that red light. Now we're completely upside down with our neurotransmitters. But mushrooms, they're so wise. I mean, you guys, we live in Alaska. Everybody knows what's happening right now. What's happening right now? The darkness is coming, right? What happens physiologically to most Alaskans in the fall is that our vitamin D levels literally plummet. I check everyone's vitamin D levels. This is what I do. But check it out. We have this beautiful mushroom. This,
Hedgehog.
this is a hedgehog mushroom I picked yesterday. I picked a lot of hedgehog mushrooms yesterday because I'm slightly addicted to it. But also because I also love to gift them to people because guess what? The highest form of vitamin D that you can get right now, other than an animal product, which is usually a fish that has high amounts of vitamin D, such as cod. But this vitamin D rich mushroom is the highest source of vitamin D that the boreal forest produces right now, just as we're going into darkness. It's almost as if our good cousin, these mushrooms, knew that our vitamin Ds were falling in the fall and decided that, hey, just before the fall ends, we're going to give you this huge amount of fruiting body. That mycelium network is already there. And just for curiosity's sake, I also picked a bunch of these, and I picked many of these winter chanterelles, also high in all kinds of nutrients that we need for the winter, which is, obviously it could be coincidence, but I don't think it is. I think these mushrooms have been working for us. I think they're the original farm, the original domesticated but not domesticated, right? I don't think that they ever wanted to be domesticated. However, they seem to have an affinity to us. If you go walking on any trail, you'll find mushrooms. They like to be near trails. It's so interesting. So
Can
this
I
whole,
say something about the
yeah,
vitamin D really quick?
yeah,
So I'll try to find it and put it in the chat here, but there's an amazing podcast about Amanita muscaria, and they touch by some psychotherapists in Switzerland that have now they've dedicated their entire lives to researching and working with Amanita. That's like what they're all about now. It's kind of amazing, but they're saying that amanita is like one of the best sources of vitamin and most bioavailable sources of vitamin D that you can get. And it's so funny because shamanically, traditionally, Amanita muscaria was dried and saved for the winter solstice, which is right around Christmas. Think about it. The evergreen trees, Santa Claus, red and white, reindeer flying. The shamanic traditions of the boreal environments were, reindeer herders, and amanita was growing with the birch, with the conifers. That's the best environment for amanita to grow in. There's birch and conifers, both. And so that Christmas tradition of the evergreen, the mushrooms, maybe it was a tradition to, uplift spirits on the very darkest days of the year. So our ancestors have been working with these mushrooms, and the amanita being a particularly panacea type of spiritual sacrament, also medicine. Our ancestors knew intuitively what they were doing, and so those stories are so potent and so important to us that we carry them on today, even though they've turned into literally just parables and stories and mythology for children. But it still is there. It still exists. You can find it. And humanity is at a point, like Marky is saying, where we need the GABA, we need the glutamate, we need things to support our vitamin D uptake. We're in critical times here. We're in an age of enlightenment. We're not in the dark ages anymore. We're in the age of, coming out of just a material understanding of the world. We know now about quantum physics, and more people, normal people, are tapping into that energy and that understanding, and mushrooms are a huge catalyst for understanding. Some people don't need them, some people don't want them, but they are here for us, and they're speaking to us. Like Dr. B says, they're growing on pathways where we walk. They're appearing in our feed. We got emojis. It's all around us. So the mushrooms are speaking, and I think as a species, we're really starting to tap in and listen, even in medical professions. So
yeah, you're so right about that. It's so interesting that we have mushroom emojis and that like video games have these mushrooms and we see them in pop culture. You're right, Gabby. They literally have found a way. Like they're like a movie star that's moved here from Austria, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He was like when he was young, he was like nothing was going to stop him from being a star. And the same with these mushrooms. Nothing's going to stop being seen. They're like we're going to be seen. I mean, they're everywhere, you guys. Did you know that they're from the stratosphere all the way to 1 mile below our ground? That's amazing. They're 2.4 billion years old. They're the world's largest organism on Earth, and they're the world's oldest organism on Earth. How can we even question that they're related to us? They're probably related to most mammals. Um, Remember in 1928, you guys, we discovered penicillin, and that's where we discovered it was on fungus. And that's where that was the year that mushrooms became a lot more popular, right? We started years later. We got the Life article about Sabina, and then we kind of like obviously we branched off. We knew that mushrooms were good, but they're so weird, and then of course it became almost taboo now. It's funny, even myself, you guys, like I'm not talking so much about Amanita because I've been indoctrinated as a physician to barely ever talk about it. But Gabby and I recently met a world authority on this mushroom, and it's quite laughable how we've been indoctrinated to be so scared of Amanita muscaria. Meanwhile, it's much safer than we've been told, especially touching it. I remember when I moved here, we were instructed to tell our kids not to touch that mushroom. And now I often pick my edible mushrooms and they're mixed in with Amanita. There's never a concern. And of course, you can eat Amanita if you're in a pinch and not even have those psycho logical effect. I mean, sorry, the pharmacokinetic effects of it do not need to be there. I mean, you can leach out all the toxins, or I shouldn't say toxins. You can leach out all the medicines and eat them as just a culinary protein, high vitamin D fruit. if you choose to. But at any rate, I want to let you guys know the fruiting body of the mushrooms, and we'll talk more about that maybe when you guys have questions because there's different aspects. But you can certainly liken the parts of the mushroom. For example, on a tree, we have fruit, and mushrooms are similar in that we have fruiting body. But there's also mycelium, which is like branches and bark on a tree, and then there's roots, which is like very much like the mycelium. So we've got these analog features in trees, but remember, trees are only 700 million years old, whereas mushrooms are a couple billion years old. So it's pretty incredible. So the reproductive part of the plant, or of the mushroom, I should say, not plant, is the fruiting body. And the mycelium is a part that you probably have a lot of questions for Gabby and I about, because now we're getting a lot of arguments about this, where we get a lot of products that are mycelium derived, and it can often be a mixture of the substrate with the mycelium. So you have a lower percentage maybe of those compounds that you're looking for. So some of the compounds we're talking about are the polysaccharides. You guys probably know beta glucans, right? Those are pretty popular. And there's triterpenes in these mushrooms as well. And
Ergosterol is another one we were talking about.
yeah,
These
there's
are
so
all antioxidants, right?
yeah,
And
phenolics, terpenes, nucleosides, peptides, small aromatic compounds. And, you know, you guys, just to be clear with you, right now there's a whole bunch of peptides online that we're trying to mimic. There's hundreds of peptides. The FDA is actually trying to shut this down because these medicines are not for human use, only for animal use, but they work extremely well. This is the tip of the iceberg. Mushrooms, we haven't even discovered all of the peptides that they have in them. So we are actually at a point right now with mushrooms where it's a little bit like an iceberg. That what's underneath that we don't know about is a pretty big amount of information. So even though we have some information that beta glucans and these smart sugars direct immunity, what I think is really fascinating the more I go in the forest and pick mushrooms is that this mushroom's pretty solid. It's like I ate them last night and I ate them in the last 3 weeks every night. And I'm not sick of them in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, you guys, if you're allergic to mushrooms, then you probably can't use medicinal mushroom therapy as much because there's a potential allergy. But if a patient or a person that's using these are not allergic to mushrooms, then they can use all mushrooms. There's usually never a problem. And there are some interactions that we can certainly get into in later courses. We'll get into some of the chemistry and discuss some of the pathways that these mushrooms are excreted by, and then maybe do give you guys a little bit of comparison, because there are some drugs you have to be concerned about. But for the most part, metabolism of these mushrooms is fairly safe, and they are, like Gabby just said, antibacterial, antiviral. They have immunity benefits, and they're anti-aging. And sorry, Gabby, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
yeah, like I just want to say that like as a highly sensitive person and I take no chemicals, like I thank God I don't need them, I don't go to the doctor unless it's an emergency. I even a lot of plants are too strong for me. I'm very, very sensitive. I can't have fragrance around me and just always been this way. But mushrooms are so gentle and supportive that I've noticed that I that's my go-to when it comes to immune system. That's my baseline. Like and for other highly sensitive people or people who are like Dr. Markin said, of course, there are some interactions, and in our course offering that will be upcoming, we'll get into those details, what you should know. Dr. Markin has a background in oncology, so like working with patients who are using mushrooms and um, Western
Yeah,
medicine, exactly, like
yeah.
when to use them, when to not use them. And of course, everybody is different and going through different things, and cancers are all different. But but overall, just in general, the mushrooms are pretty darn forgiving, except if you take a very large dose of psilocybin, not in ceremony. On your own, you might get your butt handed to you. You probably will. But that's why through our ministry, we offer ceremony and guidance with the sacramental mushrooms. But yeah, they're just like so gentle and forgiving. I recommend them for adults, for children. I have people who come to the apothecary who are quite, have some serious viral loads, and they're working with the mushrooms, and they are like it's unbelievable. Like if some of these people, and a lot of them don't want to come forward and talk about what they're going through and the benefit they're getting from natural healing with mushrooms and plants, because there are people who don't want them to walk that path. They want them to take drugs, they want them to be registered and be taking vaccines and all these things. And it's not that you can't walk in both worlds, you absolutely can. But the effectiveness of using these, natural plants and fungi can fit the bill very, very well. I wanted to also mention compounding mushrooms, just like people do in pharmacology with pharmaceuticals. There's ways to work with the mushrooms where you're taking not just the reishi, but you're taking the reishi and the cordyceps, and now you're getting even more of a benefit. When we're talking about microdosing psilocybin or amanita, bringing in some of the functional mushrooms, Dr. B thinks that's a funny term, but bringing in the medicinal mushrooms with the psilocybin, with the Amanita muscaria, or working with Amanita and psilocybin together can be very, very therapeutic, very, very effective, and something that we do all the time. Even using Amanita, like if you're using Amanita for ADHD, taking it with mucuna. Very wonderful person taught me that. A doctor, a veterinarian, but he's a doctor. He's teaching me about this, and so I made a triple extract with ultrasonifier of the mucuna, and now we're using amanita and mucuna together. And people are like, "Gabby, this is helping me so much with the ADHD symptoms that I'm going through." So compounding, just like in pharmacology, compounding mushrooms and plants can be very effective too. So.
That's yeah, those are really well made points. So I want to just before I talk a little bit about cancer, I want you guys to know some interesting facts. 90% of all mycorrhizal networks for all plants on Earth, 90% are from fungus. That's a pretty amazing figure. Like that means basically that none of our plants would be growing without this mycorrhizal network. And then the next statistic I want to give you is that 73% of all cancer drugs used right now have their origin in the natural world. My favorite of these drugs, well, I shouldn't say my favorite of the drugs. My favorite thing to talk about is Taxol. Taxol comes from the Pacific yew tree. There was actually a really cool movie. If anybody's interested, they made a really cool movie about this years ago, and it was really well done. The little boy was his mother had cancer, and he hallucinates and dreams up that this tree in the backyard is a monster. But this tree just so happens to be the Pacific yew tree that is where the chemotherapy derived from that's treating his mother with that particular drug. So the movie is pretty interesting. And I think it's called The Monster Story. At any rate, we can certainly give you a link if you're interested in that movie. But I think that it's really interesting that it's made its way into like the movies. I mean, they made a movie about it. There's pretty clear indicators that a lot of our medicine originally came from these substances. So just to give you a few cancers, cervical cancer starts from HPV 16 and 18. Kaposi sarcoma is another type of cancer that starts from herpes virus type 8. Liver cancers begin with hepatitis B and C. Lymphoma often begins with Epstein-Barr virus number 4. Merkel cell carcinoma, which by the way is almost always a deadly case of cancer that kills people very quickly, is derived from Merkel cell polyvirus. T-cell lymphoma and leukemias are derived from human T-cell lymphocytic viruses. So we already have really good data that shows that most of our mushrooms have an antiviral component. As a matter of fact, these mushrooms are interesting to research because many of the actions overlap. And almost all of them have an adaptogen portion to them, meaning they're going to help our bodies adapt to what we need. So the big problem in medicine right now is often physicians don't like certain botanicals, because if we're giving certain botanicals, let's say cat's claw, a botanical could then be very helpful for the immunity. But what if this person's on an immune suppressive agent? Can we give them this stimulating agent, right? With
Yes.
mushrooms, you can almost always across the board use them because they're modulating. So if I need my immune system stimulated and I take reishi, it's pretty much going to stimulate my immune system and give me more immune power. But if I need to deregulate and reduce my overactive immunity, it will modulate me in that way. So that makes complete sense, given that we've given you guys a little bit of a history, given that you guys are well aware that we're not just humans and some mushroom growing out of the ground. We're related. So it makes complete sense that these mushrooms have a pretty good understanding of the intricacies in our bodies. Remember, I'll take you on a side note. We do have nicotine receptors in our brains and our bodies. And I don't smoke any tobacco ever. So why do I have tobacco and nicotine receptors? Well, probably because somewhere along the line we had an interaction with that plant. We developed some receptors for it, just like with mushrooms. So if we can make a receptor for nicotine, of course we're making receptors for all these amazing compounds found in mushrooms that literally talk to our immune system. Like, this is some of the oldest languaging that you can discover on Earth, you guys. Maybe a little older than that is light. A lot of folks don't understand that light isn't just light. It's actually a message, a language that we originally spoke with the sun. And because our dineural our hunger hormones, all of it is made from our liver detecting light. It's pretty incredible. I encourage everyone to really start changing your relationship with light. And one other thing I want to note to you all is that Gabby and I love to forage because it's fun, but there's so many health benefits. Upwards of 30% of the light that you are getting when you are in the forest is infrared light reflected from the green space you're in, which is incredible. It's incredible that you can get red light therapy and calm yourself, not to mention the volatile organic compounds in that forest that you're inhaling, and then not to mention the fact that it feels so wonderful to be able to pick this mushroom and have an interaction with it. It feels a little bit more to me than just picking something out of the ground. And I think that might be because I'm related to those mushrooms, right? They're my family. Um,
And
so
what you
let's,
said about the nicotinic receptors really resonates. Ryan was just talking about nicotine patches showing good results in preventing metastasis and recurring cancers, learned from Dr. Tony Jimenez at Hope for Cancer. And so maybe not surprisingly, tobacco is the apex herb in Native American shamanism. There is nothing above it. You know, we have all these receptors for it. Why? You go cross culturally, you go down to South America, the ayahuasqueros, they're smoking tobacco the whole time. It's a, you know, for protection, for they know that this plant is an ally, that it's allied with the ayahuasca. And it's not just in the Amazon, and it's not just in Native American shamanism, but you know, it's a very the apex important plant, just like, you know, in the mushroom world and in the antioxidant world, chaga has been known as the apex antioxidant, from what I understand. But
yeah,
sort of two different things. But and I love what you're saying, Dr. B, because you know, we at the apothecary, people come through that have had liver transplants that are on immunosuppressants, and I'm like, I want to give him wormwood, you know, but it's, you know, probably the best thing to do is to work with the mushrooms. Because like you said, if you're overstimulated, the mushroom is going, it's an immune system toner. It's an immune system balancer. It's supportive. It's not going to pull you in a direction like cordyceps mushroom. Athletes love it. It repairs tissue. It helps the adrenals repair after prolonged stress. It oxygenates the organs. But is it a stimulant? No, people take it right before bed and they can sleep. So someone who has a very sensitive immune system, or sorry, nervous system like myself, I can't really, I don't have good success unless I really need to stay awake. Like, I think, you know, the last time I've taken a stimulant for staying awake was like 4 years ago. But I will use something like cordyceps for sure. Or I'll use I don't use sleeping pills, I never would, but I'll use cannabis and I'll use Amanita muscaria. And I don't have a rebound of, you know, needing to, and with cannabis a little bit, but with the mushrooms, which is what we're talking about, it's not a plant, it's mushrooms. There's really no rebound. It's so gentle.
I mean, it's
So,
just nature. We humans, we do this thing. We can't help it. We can't seem to understand this gestalt that there's more than one thing at play, right? So, an example that you're making a really good point about is that we took valerian, an herb that's really awesome, that's a GABA agonist, right? And the scientists saw valerian and they were like, oh, well, let's take that component in there and let's make more of it. So instead of having, like, cannabis is a good, it has an entourage effect, right? Every time you smoke a different strain of cannabis, there's a different effect because there's different compounds in that particular strain. Well, in this particular plant, valerian, there was a particular amount of these compounds that were GABA agonists. They maximized those, and they ripped off the poor plant its name too. Obviously, we named valerian, but they decided to call this drug Valium. You guys all know about it. It's a real potent drug, and it's called Valium, but it's just a knockoff. They got the patent for Valium, right? Which they never should have got the patent because the patent was owned by Valerian. But we robbed Valerian just like we rob a lot of ideas from nature, and then we compound them. And the problem with that is that Valerian has a history of working with these compounds in this balanced way, just like now we've decided to multiply them. So of course we've got side effects that you wouldn't experience with valerian. With Valium, it can kill you. You can die of not breathing with Valium. And this is actually why
Highly
ketamine,
addictive.
yeah, it's highly addictive. Nobody wants to prescribe it anymore, actually, because it's like, it's a really litigious type drug that you would prescribe to somebody. So that's
By the way, Amanita is great if you don't want to take Valium. Also, if you're on Valium and you want to get off of it, Amanita seems to work very well to reduce. Is it considered a benzodiazepine?
Yeah, it is. But and you're totally right though. Like, it's so, that's my point. You just read my mind, of course, because we are like that. I was thinking, like, my train of thought was like, well, this is crazy because we're potentiating this drug, and it really does have potentially a lot more issues with it, you know.
Two things I wanted to say. One is that in this culture, United States culture, this country, we have historically been mycophobic. Like we've had a long, long time. We're kind of like dating back to like the origins of like the official politics of the country. Like we came from a place that basically earth religion got shut down and Christianity, took over, and anything related with mushrooms and earth became very taboo. We brought that here to these lands, these native lands, and we, colonized, forced this. And although it was in the name of getting away from the church and the oppression, they brought a lot of it with them. And so we have so much mycophobia still remaining in this country from centuries ago. So when R. Gordon Wasson went down and was communing with Maria Sabina in Huautla de Jimenez, it was really his wife, Valentina, who was Russian. She was from Russian origin, who, got that ball rolling and wasn't afraid of the mushrooms. And, they started opening the door, but it was a foreigner, Valentina, who was able to do that. You look at Japanese oncology, they've been using turkey tail plants and mushrooms alongside medicine, their own like.
Yeah, no, they're the ones who started using PSK and PSI with chemotherapy. They're the first ones to do it. And you're making such a good point, Gabby, because, like, I've worked in oncology, and this town's pretty conservative. There's still occasionally an oncologist that will call me and like be upset about turkey tail, and I'll have to tell them, like, hey, you should read a little bit of research because you're about 20 years behind on this one. You're not going to win this argument. Like, turkey tail is well documented to increase T cells, to increase natural killer cells. And that's what you want. I mean, quite often in chemotherapy, turkey tail, which is Coriolus versicolor, is the mushroom that actually allows people to complete their chemotherapy. The drugs are so hard on people that their cell counts go completely down low. This is an agent that I've been using for 25 years to keep people able to get their chemotherapy. If they don't use it, often they have to stop their chemotherapy and wait until their body rebounds. And what that does is it allows cancers to advance. The name of the game in cancer treatment is usually to get the treatment done, to stop the cancer, and then we rebuild the patient. But it's not easy to do all that when patients are being bombarded with drugs that actually deplete their immunity.
And their doctors are not knowledgeable about
no, but in
natural.
Japan, it's like, but Japan's way ahead of us, you know.
And Europe using mistletoe in their treatments for cancer. And they don't just use mistletoe, like all mistletoe. No, this type of person, this type of cancer, the mistletoe needs to grow on this type of tree. They're trained in it. They sell mistletoe in the with their cancer treatments. Like they have specific mistletoe supplements that go with the modern medical treatments. It's fascinating. Like the more we bridge this gap though, the more opportunity we're going to have for understanding. There's a lot of medical professionals here. There's herbalists here. There's people who are doing research on mushrooms and cancer for their own. And I want to give everyone a chance to ask questions and to put their comments in. People have already been, yes, Ryan is talking about in the chat. There's some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah,
Ryan,
I was just reading that about Tricky Tail. Yeah, and they're
yeah, so
all right.
Ryan might want to comment on this. We only have like 15, 20 minutes left, and we are going to end this on time. We are going to have another, we're going to, I hopefully do another free talk, and then we're offering a course this winter. So this is not the end of these sessions. This is only the beginning. We're working with Nurses for Nurses, Modern Nurse Fest. We're working hard to align ourselves with doctors, with nurses to spread the word, to bridge the gap. The people that are here, these are the basic bridges, like me to Marky and Markian to you. It takes all different kinds of people and professionals to bridge this gap. So this is only the beginning, you guys. It's so important that we work together, that we communicate and talk. We want to talk to people who have cancer, who are going through it, people who are using mushrooms for psychological help, for spiritual reasons. If you ask me, it's all spiritual reasons, but you don't have to subscribe to that. Just take what is good for you, what's useful for you, and leave the rest. But why don't we open it up? Does anyone have questions or commentary? Would love to hear from anyone here. We have some really awesome people here in this chat, so please do. And if not, Marky and I will just keep on talking. So go, just unmute yourself and ask a question if you would like. Go right ahead now.
Okay,
I think,
I'll fill the gap if I'm done
Ryan's
talking.
here.
oh,
Okay.
hi, I'm
Hi,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Um,
Right.
so,
Do you want to
I,
introduce yourself?
uh,
No, whatever you want to
I'm
do.
like, I guess, yeah, my English name is Ryan. My Inupiaq name is Avurak. I'm originally from Kikikdaruk or Kotzebue, Alaska, but I live here in Palmer now. Um, and I've known Gabby for some years and just love her and her life work and everything she's taught me. I mean, we've learned a lot from each other, but I'm so grateful for everything that you've taught me, Gabby, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm glad that I made it here, and I look forward to the workshop this winter. I hope I can join. Um, I think I don't know if I really have a question yet. I'm looking more forward to what information you guys have on the interactions between chemo and mushrooms, because ever since I've started, I'm on Enhertu. I've had
You're on her too?
what happened Enhertu, yeah. Um, and what's happened is because I've done integrated, well, what they call integrated treatments throughout my cancer journey this past year, is what I didn't know that cancer cells actually carry a lot of antioxidants, and depending on what good stuff you're feeding your body, you could actually be feeding the cancer. So I've experienced treatment resistance 3 times, to where I was supplementing with glutathione and like these master antioxidants, not knowing that these cancer cells carry these antioxidants, and I was feeding the cancer cells. And so then it became resistant to past treatments that I've done. So I've limited the amount of integrated treatments that I'm doing alongside this chemotherapy, the Enhertu. And so far, this is the longest treatment that has worked so far. Every other time it's metastasizing, gone crazy. So I guess I'm just really looking forward to hearing and learning about the interactions and what is safe to use alongside this without causing that treatment resistance. I would ultimately like to get off the chemotherapy and, rebuild my body. But because of the integrated treatments, like my blood work, my health, thank God, has been really good and impressive throughout this whole journey. Even when I was dying, when the cancer was taking over my body had a really good fighting chance because of the natural things that I was doing alongside the treatment. So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I am really looking forward to learning more about interactions and because I know mushrooms they're not like other supplements where if you're low in something, you take this and it just builds it up. No, you could be imbalanced in many ways, and mushrooms will create that balance, whether you're low or high or, just whatever the imbalance is. And so they're very unique in that way. I just don't know. I guess I'm ignorant to what types of mushrooms I can use alongside this chemotherapy that would be considered safe and not cause treatment resistance again. So I don't know. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So much, Ryan. I
So,
appreciate you coming so much. And it's true, I've learned so much from Ryan this year, from everything she's been going through. And if, everything you've been through, like, I just thank you for continuing to share with me and with others about your journey. And you've done some really amazing things. And I've just learned so much also from you. And I saw what you wrote about the mistletoe injections. I see what Nurses for Nurses is writing on here. As a nurse, I want more oncology nurses in here next time. Guys, spread the word. Let's get them in here because they need to hear from Ryan, from Dr. Markian and stuff. And so, Dr. Markian, do you want to touch on what Ryan was just asking?
yeah, Ryan, great question. And it's funny, this is a question that actually is the reason why I went to become a naturopathic oncologist, is because you have to have some credentials actually, otherwise they are difficult to speak with about these particular subjects. But I will start by talking about 1992. In 1992, a pharmacist figured out that grapefruit juice run through the CYP4 pathway in the liver. He found out that if we had grapefruit juice, it was actually affecting the enzyme in the 3A4 pathway, meaning that you wouldn't be able to clear the drug as quickly if you took it with grapefruit juice. This changed everything in pharmacology, but it's interesting. They haven't actually done a ton of research since then because there's no money to be made. No physician is going to get money by figuring out if milk thistle interacts with this particular drug. So no one ever goes and does that. And it's interesting because what has happened almost as a result of that has been that many physicians, and I know that this is being recorded, and I know that this is not the nicest thing to say, but it's the truth. So I'm going to say it. Many physicians will just tell their patients not to take things without any understanding of the interaction. As a matter of fact, I would argue that 80% of the time there is not an interaction. And even with grapefruit juice, you guys, we have discovered that you can probably eat grapefruit juice on the day you take that drug, especially if you separate it from that drug by 4 hours. But in most cases, 4 hours away from that drug is going to be much safer and much more manageable than telling a patient they can never drink grapefruit juice with that drug. So I think we just, like with a lot of things, we take it way too far, and the American physicians have taken it so far. I mean, I still have patients that, you guys, there's a statistic on this. It's probably changed since I last did a lecture on it, which was a decade ago. And there was a really high statistic showing that when people come in, they go to Gabi's shop, they're way more comfortable telling Gabi what herbs they're taking than when they come to the physician's office and talk to the doctor, which is really crazy because you should be able to go to the doctor and tell him or her anything you want. But
Can I say something about this?
yeah,
There's a
people don't want
person
to talk
that
about it.
comes to the shop. She has a liver transplant. She's been taking psilocybin. She's a member of our church. She's been taking psilocybin for about 4 months. Every time she goes in to see how many immunosuppressants she needs, they keep reducing her dose. They've reduced it to less than half what she was taking before, the anti-rejection medicines for her liver. Now, has she told her physician that she's taking psilocybin? No. We need to bridge the gap, you guys. This
I
is
couldn't agree
really,
more. I mean, psilocybin's got such a stigma, and we have these emerging case studies where people have had spinal injuries and they're using the reason Gabby said that I don't like the word functional medicine is because I think all plants and fungi are functional. So delineating, I actually like the term mycotherapy better because it's basically mycotherapies. We're using mushrooms to as therapy for you. But yeah, it's crazy how many people will go and they're too scared to tell their doctor about any of these supplements. So the doctor, of course, all of these doctors, they're not learning the same thing I'm learning, right? Like, because we're practicing medicine. If we did have it all figured out, we wouldn't be practicing anymore. We would be giving you the product but we're like weathermen, right? We're the people who predict the weather. They're not often right, and we can't blame them for it because you can't predict the weather. Just like in medicine, you can't guarantee someone's going to be cancer free. But the difficulty I have with this is that many of these physicians that are my colleagues, because they're not being informed by their patients about these agents, such as mushrooms and all these botanicals that are so amazing, that means that they're not actually seeing the benefit because they don't even know it's there. They're often telling my patients, hey, I don't know what else you're doing, but keep doing it because it's doing great, right? And the patient's kind of thinking, well, I'm not going to tell you everything I'm doing because you might not want me to do everything I'm doing. And therefore, the doctor does never learn that these mushrooms are helpful because they're not going to likely go and read those data points unless they need to use that tool. And in their defense, they're using tools that are very complex drugs and they're very difficult to use with other things. So in their defense, they definitely don't want to have other drugs being interacting in a negative way. And that is why my profession exists, so that we can tell the physician they're working with these patients that, hey, these are safe agents that will only augment your therapy. So I think we're getting more and more open-minded to this, but it's important to like, there's so many, to speak to Ryan's comments, like there's so many redundant things that these mushrooms are doing in cancer. Apoptosis, so they're causing programmed cell death when needed. They're also upregulating these killer cells and these T cells. They're doing so many things in the certain checkpoints that actually prevent cancer from growing. So they all do different things, but they're all doing similar things. One take-home point I want to make sure you guys hear from me is that most fungus that we use in mycotherapies are making a connection between the endocrine system, the immune system, and of course our nervous system. And one point I wanted to make sure I really brought to you guys was that just look at a picture of mycelium. This is what it's doing in your body too.
This
It's
is what it's
literally
doing in the forest. It's interconnective.
it's connecting. Like the reason that lion's mane works so good for brain health and gut health is because we already have a mycelium network that connects the two in our own body. And so the mushroom comes in, it's like the ultimate expression of the doctrine of signatures.
Look at the work of Stefan Herd Buhner, okay? Some of the most scientific writing on plant medicine I've ever read, and he has no degree, but he's passed away, but his books are amazing. Now I read his work on Lyme disease. He's got it's the TOA-free cat's claw with the Japanese knotweed and then the skullcap. Of course, he has a nervine herb in the regimen. It's not just the immunotoning herb. It's not just the resveratrol, but he's got the skullcap in there, and I believe that's what ties everything together. And so this is just like, we could talk about this all day. I'm so excited that Joni is here. She asked, Dr. Joni asked, I did some research on Pipopterus, which is Piptoporus. Yes, that is the birch polypore, was hanging around the neck of the Iceman. What was his name? Forget. Anyway, one of the oldest Icemen. It was also in his pocket. So it's a very powerful anti-parasitic mushroom. And she's asking, have we used this as part of cancer treatment protocol? I definitely include it in my anti-parasitic blend, and I recommend it to people as an immune. I've read in the fungal pharmacy book that the Piptoporus has been studied for its ability to reduce tumors in a Scandinavian study. It's a very old Scandinavian folkloric medicine, but also it's known for its anti-parasitic potentials and benefits, which you can see the Iceman was carrying it around his neck. That was like a primary medicine for him. And it's a polypore. Most of the polypores are medicinal, especially in the boreal forest. And just like Nurses for Nurses is saying too, like, is it approved by the FDA? Well, it's approved by Mother Nature. I love that Nurses for Nurses is saying that. But do you want to talk about the Pipopterus mushroom at all? Do you know much about the birch polypore mushroom?
It's funny. Oh, sorry. I was just reading the comments.
Awesome comments.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't use it a ton, but I just picked some because I've been going so much, and as the forest gets a little bit more scarce of the other mushrooms, I'm like, okay, I picked a whole bunch of polypores, and I'm particularly interested for its GI benefits. And there are some companies that make it in combined blends, But for the most part, because I've been working in mostly oncology, I've been using, more of the versicolor reishi. And, it's interesting. One of the things I do want to make sure I comment to people is like, to become an expert in any of these mushrooms, it just begins with one. Like it just begins with
Usually
one.
psilocybin.
Yeah, sure. For many, it's psilocybin. But my point is like if you become fascinated with picking these hedgehog mushrooms, that eventually you're going to want to learn more, and then you're going to want to learn more about other mushrooms, and the more you learn, the more you start to realize that we're actually related to them. Yeah, I think it just takes a little bit of time. It's hard to massage that into someone's brain right away, but if you see the pictures of the neurotransmitters in these mushrooms and you overlap them with ours, it's pretty clear that someone was copying off someone in the class during that test. And I think that given how old mushrooms are, it's more likely we were copying the mushrooms' homework than it was copying ours, because it's a lot older. We're just a young species. This is a 2.5 billion year old. And you guys, one thing I want to make sure you guys are aware of, does anybody know about the subway study in Japan?
Sounds familiar. What is that?
Well, in Japan, in Tokyo, they wanted to see if they could make the subway system more efficient. And so they drew a diagram of it, and they used yeast medium particles to make the stations. And then they said that the mycelium network is going to want to use these.
Listening to a mushroom talk.
And so these mushrooms basically found a way to make
There's that guy from
a way to the mushrooms found a way to re-navigate the subway in a more efficient way than humans, which is pretty incredible, because those Japanese engineers are pretty smart, but somehow the mushrooms found a more direct route for the subway system. That's pretty cool.
Mushrooms are smarter. Well, they haven't been gaslighted, or maybe they have. They haven't been gaslighted as much as us humans. And this is what we were talking about this morning also with Lucy Bell. It's like we know certain things, and the more you take the sacramental mushrooms, well, for Dr. Markian, all the mushrooms are functional. For me, all the plants and mushrooms are sacraments. But when I talk about the sacraments, I'm mostly talking about amanita and psilocybin containing species. Those are the mushrooms that help you awaken your own inner doctor. Those are the mushrooms that help you remember that you are a sovereign being, that society is a cult, that it doesn't matter what the FDA says. It matters what your body says. And it helps you, like what Ryan's writing about here, like all of her supplements are taboo. At what point do you say, like, I can't hear this anymore? I need to do what's right for me. Those sacramental mushrooms a lot of times can be the ones that return us to our intuition. And that's why I've taken the time to create the ministry and run it the way that we do. And I have to run 2 businesses, 2 Instagram accounts, 2 of everything, but I will continue to do it because the work I do with the functional plants and the mushrooms, none of it would have been possible for me personally unless I had that connection originally with the psilocybin and then later the amanita. To help guide me in my work, to help me remember that even though I was the black sheep in my family of medical professionals, like to continue and to bring light and to continue to share light and shed light on this. And a lot of us here today, we've experienced that gaslighting. We've experienced that feeling of being the rainbow sheep, the black sheep, maybe at work, maybe in our families, maybe both. But here we are, and it's our time to shine, and it's our time to bridge this gap and to remember, and if we're remembering, if we have the capacity to bring others in and help them remember too. Because you're right, there's no money in the cure. Big pharma, whatever they do to this movement, it's going to be the way that they do it. So it's us little grassroots people here and there that build the movement from underground, like the mycelium. It's the connections. We're doing it. We're acting like mycelium right now, like mushrooms. We're sharing without expectations. We're sharing simply for the fact that we know that getting together and sharing this and trying this stuff and listening to each other's experiences are going to enrich the work we're doing. And hopefully that ripple will just continue out further and further so that people have answers and they have more faith and they have less fear around things that could be actually life-saving.
But I mean, I do think that it makes a little sense. We do fear the unknown, and right, like we have brought like Amanita is in pop culture everywhere, but it's slightly mysterious, right? It's slightly like unknown. And I think like it's funny, Gabby, like I invite people to come all the time. And like a lot of people say the same thing. They'll say like, oh, I don't trust myself. Like I don't it's and when they say that, I'm thinking, oh, you're so domesticated that you don't even trust yourself to go pick a mushroom. Like you don't have to eat it. You could just go pick it and bring it home and like identify it. So Gabby asked me a question. I want to quickly just make sure everyone knows some of the traditional uses of that polypore are wound dressing. That's pretty cool. Like slicing it on the wound, preventing infection, digestive health, of course, immune support, anti-cancer therapy. Part of why that's so important, and it's interesting, I just quickly looked it up to refresh myself. And if, of course, it has all of those chemicals we talked about. It's got the polysaccharides, the beta glucans, which help natural killer cells and T function. It's also got the anti-inflammatory effects by enzymes and cytokines. It's got anti-cancer potential. It produces that apoptotic effect where it's producing the cell death of cancer cells. Like that, you've got to blow them up and get rid of them, otherwise they're going to propagate. Antimicrobial properties, antibacterial, antifungal.
That's the birch polypore, you guys, and that's the white-looking mushroom that we'll bring one for our next talk.
I mean,
It smells divine. Oh, it's so beautiful. When you encounter that mushroom, it's like such a just the experience of finding one on a dead tree, a birch tree, dying birch tree is like, it's so magical. But listen, Marky, and I love him. He's always down to go show us. He's going to show us one. Marietta, did you have a question?
No, actually, I had a quick comment about how, from a nursing perspective, historically, I hope we're just at a time where, I hope we're just at a time where maybe we are going to advance forward. I like to call upon Martha E. Rogers a lot, where she talks about how we went through history and, we started in this sacrament healing, so we can't just like not acknowledge that history, but then we moved into modern science, so I can see why you would shun a lot of these things to get to that next level. But now we're coming at a time where maybe we need both of those things, or maybe we should have had all of those things all along, and it will just be so much better for our health and for our physical bodies and our overall wellness. So thank you guys.
Thank you
I think
too.
you're absolutely right about that.
So guys, we've already gone over, we're going to go, but this is recorded. I'm going to, I will send a link of this in an email. If you're not on my email list for the church or for the apothecary, put your email in the, whatchamacallit here, the side thing, the chat. Put your email in the chat and I'll add you to it. And in that email, I will also tell you when our next Zoom is happening, probably in November, I'm thinking.
Yeah, early November, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to just do this like regularly and just like build steam. And this is a place for your ideas, how to make it better, feedback. So this is only the beginning, and we just appreciate you guys taking the time. I know Ryan signed off, but she said thank you so much. Just really appreciate everyone here. I got Lori, I got your email, so thank you guys very, very much, and we'll stay in touch. Dr. B, we'll get together and send something comprehensive so that you know what's coming next and how to get in touch with us. The apothecary, we're open Tuesdays through Saturdays. The hours are online, chimedicinals.org. I'm putting it in the thing here. We will be at Modern Nurse Fest in Florida in February, and you can get your CEs for learning about mushrooms and Amanita. So check out modernnursefest.org to learn more about Nurse Fest, bridging the gap in many, many ways. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Dr. B, did you want to say anything to close out?
Just that, this is our oldest living relative, and, it's about time we definitely start working together with this relative and stop being so scared of this relative.
Yes. That maybe it was the black sheep just like us.
Yeah, maybe that's why we're
the nerdy friend, like Marcus.
That's why we like this guy so much.
Totally. It's our time to shine as the nerds and the black sheep. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate you so much.
Take care.
Much love.
Much love.